Raymond, right now the buzz around NFL media and NFL analysts is that the 49ers are one of the prohibitive favorites to take the NFC. Now, that means, Raymond, obviously, the GoldCast is one of the prohibitive favorites to take the podcasting world. Now, let me ask you a question, Raymond. Of all of our rival podcasts, of which we've mentioned many on this show, who are the two biggest threats that you see trying to take a run at us that we have to go through to get to the Lombardi?
Oh, man, that's a short list. I think the Dances with Wolves cast is one of them. I think the Who Dat cast is another one.
Wait, who Dances with Wolves? Who do the Dances with Wolves cast cover? Remind me.
Pretty sure there's the Chiefs. I think so. It's either that or they just covered the Dances with Wolves film because they're really big. I know they're big fans of the film.
You've never listened to actually check and to see what they're talking about.
No.
This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy3, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the First, baby.
Boom! All right, Raymond, huge show today. Lots to talk about. Even though free agency is still technically going on, for the most part, it's pretty much a wrap for our 49ers. And, well, we were singing the praises of the 49ers last week and this week. This is the week now that the rest of the NFL media and analysts have now started to come out and really give their 2 cents on what they have thought about the 49ers and about all of our NFL teams. So, but unequivocally, there have been some pretty high praises of the 49ers. Now, we're going to start with NFL Media's Jim Trotter wrote a big, huge article about the entire draft. And here's a couple things that he said. He said, my free agency winners are the Bucs and the 49ers for choosing to largely trust in what they have rather than go on external shopping sprees. San Francisco reached the Super Bowl 2 years ago, then was decimated by injury last season, losing its most important players on each side of the ball for much of the year. Quarterback Jimmy G played in just 6 games, and edge rusher Nick Bosa appeared in only 2 before injury sidelined them. Not surprisingly, the 49ers fell from 13 wins to 6. With both returning, as well as a number of others who missed time, the 49ers are in a prime position to make another run, which highlights the significance of re-signing free agents like offensive tackle Trent Williams, cornerbacks Jason Verrett, Emmanuel Mosley, and Kwan Williams, fullback Kyle Juszczyk, and safety Jaquiski Tart. Plus, the restricting of some contracts allowed them to be strategic on the external market in signing center Alex Mack, who previously played under Kyle Shanahan in Cleveland and Atlanta, as well as edge rusher Samson Ebukam. So, Raymond, here's the question, the first question that I want to ask you. Did the Niners win free agency?
Yes, I think it goes a level above. I know he kind of worded it. I mean, even though he gave more details towards the Niners, which makes me feel like, he was leaning towards the Niners as far as winning free agency goes. He also threw the Bucs in that conversation. I would put the Bucs maybe at number 3. I would say Patriots were probably behind San Francisco in terms of what they did in free agency. That looks promising, even though spending the way the Patriots did doesn't always work out. There's many examples to the fact that it actually doesn't. Whereas the Niners, they didn't go out and sign a bunch of new guys. We actually retained a bunch of core players and added some players in key roles and to fill some voids. The biggest void of all being the center position, which is the quarterback of the offensive line. So getting a 6-time Pro Bowler and the fact that this is going to be the 3rd stint for Alex Mack and Kyle Shanahan on Kyle Shanahan's team is huge because he knows the system. They obviously were originally betting on Weston Richburg, who signed a 5-year deal with us back when we first acquired him, but that's not worked out because he's had back-to-back devastating injuries, the second of which is most likely going to force him to retire, which is unfortunate, so I wish him the best. But we have to move on, and we replaced him with an even better player. So a little bit older, True, but much more accomplished in his position. So it's an upgrade all around in my book, and a healthier player at that. So I think it's a huge leg up, and I think they destroyed it in terms of keeping your core players together, the same core players that helped you get to the Super Bowl in 2019, but unfortunately were too injured to help assist in a second run. They're all back now, and there's no way in hell that same anomalous, injury bug plagues the team again for a second year in a row. The odds just do not work out that well in the NFL in this case. It's always the opposite, right? We see one year that looks skews in one direction extremely, and then the very next year it skews in the opposite direction. The Niners are in a position where it's going to skew in the opposite direction.
So here's my answer to the question. Did the Niners win free agency? Well, it's a little bit of a twofold answer for me. And I'd say we won free agency when it comes to the offense. I think we probably have the best offensive line in the league. And we've seen time and time again that the more time a quarterback has, that's probably the number one key that you need is giving your quarterback time to deliver at the level that he's capable of. Jimmy G is a great quarterback, and if you give him time behind what might be the best offensive line in the league, be careful because he is going to be capable of delivering at a very high clip as far as winning is concerned. Okay, so did we win at that side? Yes. Now the defense is still going to be a wait and see for me, and I'll explain why. We have a brand new head coach. Okay, we lost Kerry Hyder. That was a big cog that I was really hoping we were going to be able to pair with the return of Nick Bosa and hopefully a healthy D Ford. And we have yet to address the secondary. We still have questions at secondary. We have always had questions at secondary this entire Shanahan-Lynch run, right? So I'm going to say that the 49ers won free agency as far as offense is concerned. The defense is a little bit more wait and see. I still think this is a monster free agency. I think we are arguably one of the best teams in the league. Absolutely. I mean, I believe the 49ers are going to go right back and compete for a Super Bowl immediately come this September. But I have some questions at the defense. It's like the defense, I'm like, I'll let you know by week 6 if I think we won free agency on the defense. It's a little bit of a wait and see for me. That's where I'm at on that one.
Yeah, and I think part of it is because Kerry Hyder, hasn't put up sack numbers like that since his rookie season, so he's largely been inconsistent for most of his career. I think the fact is he thrived in our system because it's very defensive line friendly. He was also with a familiar coach in Chris Kocurek, who always does very well with defensive line players, turning mediocre or average players, into above average players and turning star players into, superstar players like a Nick Bosa, for example. So I think that the fact is that Kerry Hyder played beyond expectations, and that kind of raised his price to a level that the 49ers weren't willing to go. Because remember, he was playing edge in a role where edge is normally solidified by two more high quality starters that just weren't there. So I think the fact was they've always envisioned him as a backup. I think Matt Mayoka even said the same thing. So I think the fact that he played to a more starting caliber player was not what the 49ers were expecting, which was a nice, pleasant surprise, albeit in a losing effort, but something that just didn't necessarily bode well in terms of bringing him back because the 49ers didn't necessarily have that price in mind for him. But that's okay. Samsung is really the edge. They want to get younger at edge and get a player in there that they can help potentially groom into that type of role to complement Nick Bosa, because we know D Ford's not going to be reliable. Even though he's young, he's just got injuries that are just not working out in his favor at all. He's dealing with back injuries, and it's just not, it just doesn't look like it's just going to turn out to be one of those unfortunate free agent acquisitions that just did not work out. Defense has not panned out too well in free agency, with the exception of Richard Sherman. But even in that case, we got, 2 quality years out of him, and then some below par. His first season with us was below average, and his last season with us he barely played. So we didn't really get a whole lot out of him either. I think the same can be said for What's his name? Quan Alexander, who was great for her first few games, then got suspended another game, then missed half the season, but was able to come back in the playoffs, but was never quite himself after he tore his pec. And, we let him go after that. So D Ford, Quan Alexander, Richard Sherman, quality guys, when they're healthy, but unfortunately they just weren't healthy enough for the Niners. So it's something they're going to have to address going forward. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it. But I think they're going to go to the draft again and see if they can try to draft and hit lightning in a bottle the way they did with Nick Bosa, but that's really hard to do. Granted, Nick Bosa was a more obvious, his level of polish was very obvious coming out of college, and that translated to the pros very smoothly, and it's hard for that to be duplicated. Javon Kinlaw's a project. So, but hopefully with Bosa back in the lineup, he'll be able to shine a bit more than he did in his rookie campaign. So, but I'm expecting big things out of Samson and Kinlaw going forward. And we have DJ Jones back in the fold. That was a big one. And Kawan Williams is back too. And when he's healthy, he's one of the best nickel corners in all of football.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I got nothing.
I got nothing. No, I agree. I hear what you're saying.
Moving on.
Moving on. Kyle Madsen of the Niners Wire wrote an article today talking about the one glaring move that the 49ers missed right now during free agency. And that, of course, he was talking about was the addressing of our backup quarterback. Right now we have two quarterbacks on the books right now. It's Josh Rosen and Josh Johnson. Those are only two quarterbacks. And the two options, he said, was possibly trading for Gardner Minshew from the Jaguars or getting our quarterback in the draft. Now, my question to you is, what do you think is the most likely outcome here? What do you think the 49ers are going to do? I'll tell you what I think, but I want to hear what you think they're going to do first.
Well, I mean, for those of us that are paying attention, we know that C.J. Beathard was left for free agency and he ended up with the Jags. Nick Mullins is still floating out there. The Niners could theoretically re-sign him, although I would rather not see him back in a Niners uniform. Backup. The margin for error for backups is smaller for starters. And Nick Mullins, in my opinion, burned his bridge last year with the Niners. But that being said, Josh Rosen and Josh Johnson are, I feel like, C.J. Beathard and Nick Mullins 2.0, going by by their track record. So you're not doing much better with those guys. But again, Kyle Shanahan gets the most out of quarterbacks, despite some of them being mostly subpar for most of their careers. So I think I like that we dodged the bullet in Joe Flacco. If we got a Gardner Minshew, that would be perfect in my book. The question is, what do the Jags want for him? He's been a quality starter for 2 years, does not have a winning record, but would come relatively cheap because he's still on a rookie contract. He's $900,000 this year. He'll be like $850 next year, or I think it's vice versa. I can't remember exactly. But this guy has thrown more than double the amount of touchdowns than he has picks. So he's accurate. He puts the ball in the right place and would be a bona fide quality backup for Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy's obviously much better, but I think Gardner would be a step up from all four of the quarterbacks that we've just gone through. And but again, the question is, what do the Jags want for him? I think considering he's got a losing record and hasn't really done much for the Jags, I don't think that the Jags are in a position to ask for a lot if the Niners were to go for him. I think it'd be like a mid-round pick at this point, something like a third or a fourth. The question is, do they want to do that, and will the Jags go for it? Because we know that they're probably going to draft a quarterback with their pick, being what I think they finished 1-15. So they're going to pick a quarterback, and C.J. Beathard's going to be one of the backups there. So that Gardner Minshew is definitely the odd man out. The question is, does he land in the Niners, and for how much? Free agency's not over, so he could still land up. Even though this article suggests that we missed out, it's not technically. He's technically wrong, because free agency, he could still be acquired in the next week or so.
I think obviously the C.J. Beathard pickup means that they are most likely moving away from Gardner Minshew. I'm going to go a different direction. I actually think that because now unfortunately with all the allegations surrounding Deshaun Watson, We do believe that door is closed, at least for this season, probably for sure. I don't even think he's playing football this year. I think you can pretty much, that's a wrap. But, so here's what I think. I think what they do now is they go with their plan B approach, which is they go and try and draft the quarterback of the future. Who is the guy that's going to lead this team into the next era for Shanahan and Lynch once Jimmy G's time comes to a close? Now, is that going to happen this year? Who knows? Is that going to happen after this year? If Jimmy G gets injured again, yes, for sure. It's a wrap, But if Jimmy G stays healthy and leads them back to another Super Bowl, there's probably a good chance we stay with Jimmy G for the foreseeable future. But as of right now, I think really what they're looking for is they are looking for a long-term solution at quarterback. They're willing to accept Jimmy G as a long-term solution so long as he can continue to stay healthy and continue to improve. Then I think they have no problem. I don't think anybody in 49ers world has a problem with a healthy, evolving Jimmy G. That's a very dangerous proposition and one that he's very capable of doing, but you got to put in the reps. And we've said that a million times. I don't want to repeat that for the billionth time on this podcast. I think really where the 49ers go is in the draft. They now look towards grabbing, maybe they get one of the top 5 quarterbacks. They're sitting at 12. I'm not sure if 5 quarterbacks are going to go in the first 12 spots. That's a stretch. It doesn't happen very often. So I think there is a possibility that at the 12th spot, the Niners do have a top 5 quarterback available to them. Now the question is it one that they think fits their style? And is it one that they're going to actually pick up? That's the question, but that's where I think they're going to go. So let's move on. Last one, Raymond, and this is the big one. So Mike Silver, NFL media, comes out and is just singing the praises of the 49ers. One of the big things that he said here, he said, I think the 49ers are the favorite, not only in the NFC West, but in the NFC. And in the NFC West, I don't think it's close. The 49ers, to me, are very much like the team that came very, very close to winning the Super Bowl. And I do write off last year to the insane wave of injuries they experienced. I know they might lose some guys. You get Nick Bosa back. If Jimmy Garoppolo ends up being the quarterback and can stay healthy, you see them trying to fortify what they have. So here's the question, brother. Are the 49ers the prohibitive favorite in the NFL? Your thoughts?
I think yes, because this is a team that would have been in the mix in this past year's Super Bowl. The Bucs would not have gotten past the 49ers. I think it would have been a good fight, especially in the trenches, considering they have a good pass rush. We have a good pass rush. We have a quality quarterback. They have a championship quarterback. I think there's lots of parallels between both teams, but Kyle Shanahan versus Bruce Arians, no contest. He's a good coach for sure. And obviously he's gotten a chip before Kyle has gotten a chip. So, credit to him for sure. I don't want to take anything away from that, but I still think that Kyle Shanahan is the better coach of the two. That said, I'm not sure if the NFC West is not even close. I mean, I still think Seattle's always going to be pesky, even though they can't ever get to an NFC championship to save their lives. I still think they're going to be pesky in the race as they always are. I think the teams that are going to be less relevant this year are obviously going to be the Rams, who have retooled at some big positions that will not. I'm not sure if we're going to see the benefits of that right out the gate. I think there's going to be some growing pains. I could be wrong. And then the Cardinals, I think, who are just going to be more or less the Cardinals. So, kind of a 500 team that looks like they could be amazing one week and then completely flounders the next week. Kind of like the Warriors, they win a couple and look great, and then they lose. 2
down, 2 up, 2 down, 2 up, 2 down.
2 down. Yeah, that's how the Cardinals are. So that's where I think we're at. So I think Seattle's going to be pesky, but the Niners do take the West. And as far as the rest of the NFC is concerned, we have Green Bay's number. The Saints no longer have Drew Brees, and the Bucs are beatable.
the Bucks are beatable. They just never came across a team capable of doing it. How many times have we seen Green Bay and New Orleans both choke away their postseason runs? This is quite common. The Niners have done it to both these teams several times. So I'm going to agree, but I'm going to say yes with a twist, kind of like the first time, the first question. Yes with a twist. The Niners are the prohibitive favorite if they cannot be one of the top 3 most injured teams in the league, as they have been 5 of the last 6 years.
So yours is yes with a contingency.
Yes, that's my contingency. This is the elephant in the room. The 49ers have been one of the most injured teams, top 3, 5 of the last 6 years. It's insane. We've only had one healthy season. Kyle Shanahan's only had one season with a healthy team. I don't know what we got to do. We fired our strength and conditioning coaches twice in a row. I haven't actually looked into seeing if we fired anybody from the strength and conditioning program this year. I haven't heard anything or read anything. So,
well, I remember they fired one. Did they fire 2?
Well, they fired the one before that guy. They fired the guy that was on staff when the Niners came, and then they fired that guy. They fired the new guy a year later and brought in this crew at the beginning of 2019. Oh. Yeah. They fired 2 different crews under the Kyle Shanahan regime. So I believe the 49ers are capable of being the prohibitive favorite. I think if everyone that we've seen on this roster stays healthy, they will be the prohibitive favorite. But that's the key word. They have to stay healthy. And if they can't stay healthy, then no, we'll be right back sitting here talking about the first pick in the draft again, wanting to pull our hair out. Trent Williams was said that, I was reading an article about him, and Trent Williams was saying that, they all watched the playoffs last year, and they all felt like that they could have completely competed with this team, with the NFC West, the NFC in general, and or for the Lombardi. And I totally agree. When I watched this year's playoff runs by the NFC, I thought the NFC was wide open. I thought it did not look very. I was not convinced by any of the big guys, and as we saw, a wild card team on the road managed to knock off everybody and then take the whole thing. So there you go. But the Niners can be the prohibitive favorite, but they have to stay healthy. If we continue on this path of the 6th out of the last 7 years being top 3 most injured teams, man, we're going to be right back where we were before, and that's really the toughest part.
And the other thing, too, that comes to mind is if this happens again, which I believe it will not, then Kyle Shanahan's got to change something in the practice. You can't keep firing strength and conditioning staffs and think that you're not culpable for some of this in some way. Because something, we remember we heard cacklings that, his practices were a little bit more intensive than other NFL teams. That can be a contributing factor to some of these injuries that we're seeing in this regime. And if it happens again, I think that's a conversation worth revisiting.
It is, and I agree. But here we go. What say you, GoldCast Nation? Did the 49ers win free agency? Where do you think our backup quarterback is coming from? And last, are the 49ers the prohibitive favorites in the NFC? Let us know. Sound off in the comments. Go to youtube.com/thegoldcast and let us know. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All right, and we'll be back next week with more Bay Area sports. 49ers, Warriors, Giants are so close to coming back, Ray. I can't wait. And so concludes another edition of the GoldCast. Oh, wait, one more thing. 300th episode this Monday. Special guests, surprise guests joining the crew for the 300th episode. This is a big one for us. We're very excited. What a huge accomplishment, Raymond. Here we are, episode 300. This will be our 300 episode anniversary video. It'll be dropping this Monday, and we got an awesome guest. And so concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy3 III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
Boom! We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.